I think one of the most common decision-making traps CEOs fall into or leaders fall into is the need to have all the information to make a decision, and that taking more time versus less time to make a decision will lead to a better decision. I think, first of all, it's having the criteria to understand how you're going to measure a decision. I think that's really important to knowing whether a decision was a success or failure. Holding yourself to the metrics, and not just the metrics. Sometimes, even if the metrics work, you might see instinctually customers don't like a change or there's some other signals that it's not working. I think whether they recover or not is about how they measured, how quickly they started understanding the implications, and how quickly they revert or pivot. I mean, these are often the big decisions on recovering. As you know, lots of decisions don't work out. I mean, one of the most recent stats I heard, because I'm a tennis fan, is that a winning tennis player in the Grand Slam will win 54% of their points. That means 46% don't work out. What's important? Like that you read the signal from the last shot and you kind of recover to the next one. So I think if you want to help people understand why something happened, then I think you should say, like, what were the drivers that led to this outcome? So I think you want people thinking about the inputs and the outputs. And so that way, when something good happens that you didn't expect, you should also be clear with people like, hey, was this the result of our efforts or some outside factor? If you have a bad decision that leads to a good outcome, it means that you misjudge something in your drivers or in your assumption set. So I think it's about helping people understand the drivers and the outputs and how the two are related. And so if something good happens and you can't correlate it, it's luck.
Yeah.
Or an outside force that you underestimated to the positive, let's say.
Now, I want to talk about one of my other favorite insider tips for changing culture without losing soul. I ignore my C-suite. I ignore them. It kind of drives them crazy. So I believe if you want to change a culture towards your purpose, you need to go where the magic happens. So where does that magic happen in your organization? It goes to the people who are doing the atomic work of value creation. That typically is 2, 3, 4 levels away from your C-suite. These are people who control the drivers of the inputs, of the metrics that you report. You know, in my business, that could be somebody who, as an example, does performance marketing for the direct channel in which we acquire small businesses. I want to get to that person. I want to influence them as fast as possible. At both StubHub and at Xero, when I arrived, one of the very first things I did was I basically didn't go to my C-suite. Within the first 90 days, I gathered the top 100 to 200 leaders who are typically down to the director level and established a direct relationship with them, established a conference, a summit, and got the data from them first. So everywhere I've been, the key for me to changing culture has been to go where the magic happens.
So the best way to avoid making a bad decision is to have a culture where bad news are good news. So you teach everybody that if you feel something is wrong, it is good news. We are happy to hear it. Good news is sort of no news, but no news is bad news. Because if you don't get information, if people are afraid to tell you what is happening, that's really bad news. So if people believe that bad news is good news, then typically you automatically figure out very quickly once you make the wrong call.
I think as leaders, we jump to solutions very quickly. In fact, people come in and we say, don't even finish. I know what you're going to say. Let me give you some ideas right now. And I actually think if we just asked 3 more questions about what the problem is, we'd find a much better problem to solve that makes the solution cheaper, more elegant, and work better.
One factor that nobody has mentioned that actually has a greater impact on stunting our growth than any of the ones we've talked about, and that is our own success. You know, once we find a way that works, once we gain expertise in our business, we kind of shut down to possible ways of doing it better. You know, the more that we know, the less we question. Curiosity for me is a space between what you know today and what you want to know. And most of us, we show up to work, we have no space there. Well, we have our to-do lists with thousands of items to do. And yet it is in that space that all of our growth and innovation happen.
I think it's so easy to fall into the trap of data, and you need to have a curious mindset to be like, is that true? For instance, I worked with a bank and they did data mining on their best customers. And they said the first thing our customers do is open a checking account. And the second thing that our customers do, the best ones, is open a checking account. And the third behavior is they open a checking account. So they're like, clearly, we need to open a lot more checking accounts. Well, their best customers have also been with this bank for over 30 years. And 30 years ago, there wasn't much to do other than open checking accounts. So we need human intervention to be like, does this data make sense without mindlessly following what it's saying?